In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at using our Dermacolor camouflage system to cover vitiligo. The Dermacolor is known as a 3-part system, so in order to create a really durable and water-resistant base, it's important to use the Dermacolor camouflage cream, then the Dermacolor fixing powder, and then finally the Dermacolor fixing spray. We're going to begin by cleansing the skin with the Kryolan Clean and Care Natural Micellar Water. This process really helps to ensure that the skin's clean, so that we have a nice, clean surface to be working upon. The next step in our process is to apply the Dermacolor Moisturizing Cream, just so that the skin is hydrated and we eradicate any potential dry areas of skin. This will always ensure that it's a much easier application process. The second stage is analysis. With vitiligo, we need to replace the melanin in the skin that is missing. So it's the reverse of covering something that's dark, like dark circles or scarring. We've actually got the absence of color when we have vitiligo. So what we need to do is replace the skin's natural layer system. So our melanin is the thing that sits behind our skin, behind the actual layers of the dermis. So what we need to do in order to correct the color here, if it was much stronger, is replace that surface level. So these are the colors that we would generally see naturally at the bottom of the skin, which actually starts to build up to create skin tone and affects the color that we see on the surface level. Now, when you're analyzing which corrector colors are necessary to use, the easiest thing is to hold these colors right next to the skin, and then you would naturally start to see which of the two is more complementary for the person you're working on. Now, if we did need to use a corrector color in this scenario, the most of the pigmentation that I can see is the top one here, which is the D32. We can see it quite visibly already existing in the client's skin, and therefore we know that that one will be more complementary to be replacing the melanin that's missing. What we're going to do in today's tutorial is cover the affected areas of vitiligo, and then we're going to softly neutralize the entire skin so that it would end up being a no makeup look, but with the concealing aspects of the Dermacolor. So the first area we're going to be working on is this area affected underneath the eye. So this is the thinnest part of the skin on the face. So we need to make sure that we're working in finer layers as to not overload this area that can then cause creasing. So working in smaller layers, building up where necessary, is key to achieving something more natural. I'm using a small brush, really light and fluffy. First of all, I'm gonna just begin to stipple. So I'm just pressing very lightly in the area and then lifting so that we're building up a stippling effect of color. And the second brush, which is completely clean, and I'm using that just to gently press the product into the skin. If you're applying this on yourself as well, your fingers are a great tool to use. The heat within your fingers will naturally help the product to melt into the skin and become a lot more of a natural impression. Dermacolor is made of a combination of oils and different waxes. So as we know, wax is susceptible to heat. So if you actually use a little bit of warmth on the surface of the product, it's going to warm that wax up and make it a lot more malleable and much more easier to blend into the skin. So we're now going to be working on the affected areas here on the chin. What we need to recognize is that on everybody's face, the pigmentation changes as we go across or up along the face. So usually on guys that have a beard or have stubble, you'll find that this area, once cleanly shaven, is lighter. That's because it gets much less sun exposure due to the fact that we have hair here. So we are going to warm this slightly so that it's more representative of the other pigmentation we can see. So in order to make sure that we're matching what we can see here, what we want to do is create the color match on the actual cheek where we want to represent this kind of skin tone. And then make sure that once it actually works here, we know that once we connect these together, it's going to work as an entire look. Again, I'm using this stippling motion. The stippling motion actually helps to recreate that same kind of pattern inflection of pigmentation in the skin. So this is a much more natural approach. So you may wonder why I didn't use correction colors before I was applying the Dermacolor camouflage cream in the skin tones. It's important to remember that the Dermacolor contains up to 50% pigment coverage. If you look at most foundations on the market, their pigment would sit anywhere between 6 to usually around 15% pigment coverage. So when we consider Dermacolor being 50%, you can already have an idea of the covering capabilities of the product. So I know that the Dermacolor in skin tone alone was going to be strong enough to actually work on top of and without the need for a corrector color. I'm now going back in with my clean blending brush. This is just going to help to encourage the makeup to sit a little bit deeper into the skin. I'm now going to neutralize some of the pigment that we can see here on the forehead. This is just going to help to tie in all of the skin across the face. The key thing about this stippling motion is that it's still going to allow certain parts of the natural skin to come through also. So you basically achieve a much more natural impression because you do have areas of the neutralized skin coming through. The next stage, because Dermacolor works as a camouflage system, we have our Dermacolor fixing powder. Now, this part of the process is essential for durability up to the point of actually becoming waterproof. When you actually apply the loose translucent powder, you need to let it sit on the skin for 10 to 15 minutes before removing any excess powder. This enables enough time for the powder to be able to work down into the cream and set it from the base upwards. So you notice the motion that I'm using as well. I've pinched the powder puff together so that I've got a domed surface, and then I'm pressing and rolling my powder into the cream. It's important that you get a good contact between the powder and the Dermacolor camouflage cream. So a brush isn't really suitable for this type of makeup. So then at this stage, allow 10 to 15 minutes, just let the powder settle in to the skin and get down to the bottom application of the cream. Then after that period of time, you can remove the excess powder with a nice soft brush, clean brush, and buff over the surface of the application area, and that will just remove any remaining particles of the powder. Now, using the translucent powder does tend to mattify the skin a little bit more than what would actually appear natural, but once the natural body heat starts to work with the makeup, you'll see natural sheen come back through and it will start to look a lot more natural. So the third and final part of our Dermacolor system is our Dermacolor fixing spray. Now, this contains an SPF of 20. It's really essential to use the spray on areas that potentially there might be friction. This can help reduce the effect of transfer from the makeup to clothing. So when you're applying the spray, hold it 15 to 20 centimeters away from the skin. Make sure you've shaken the can vigorously and then work in circular motions as you're pressing down on the button. Short, sharp bursts are best. Make sure you're not going too close to the skin, as that can actually transfer wet dots of the product onto your base. It wants to be more of a mist rather than a jet. Thanks for watching, everyone. We hope you found that information useful. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.